Alright, hey Shalom brothers, Yahweh Bashim Thumb. This is Sakuran, and with me we have
Manatazak.
right, and then what we're gonna do is go into the breakdown of Genesis, the third chapter. Alright, because one, there's a few brothers that want to know the actual breakdown. You know, certain brothers already know it, but maybe they haven't gone in depth with it or even heard it broken down in depth. You know, so we're gonna break it down to you. You know, as the elders have broken down to us in times past. You know, elders, Tahar, Gabar, Rakah, Roundup, you know, on down. Alright, so brother, if you could read Genesis 3 and 1.
Khan. It's Genesis, the third chapter, verse 1. It says, Now the serpent was more subtile than any beast of the field which the Lord Yahweh had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath the Most High said, You should not eat of every tree of the garden?
Right, so now it says, Now the serpent was more subtile than any beast of the field which the Lord power had made. And he said unto the woman, Yea, hath the Most High said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden. Now, the first word we're going to emphasize on is the word serpent. You know, and the question you should ask yourself is, was that an actual serpent? Or was that, like a metaphorical term for a man? You know, you're going to come to find out that it's the latter. It's the metaphorical term for an actual man that was living in the garden, you know, that was wicked, you know. It was, he was slick, he was cunning, he was deceptive. Now you hear those words, and who comes into mind, you know, nowadays? That would be the white man, Esau. And that's exactly who it is. You know, that serpent was Esau back then. The only thing is, back then he had color. You know, back then he had color. He wasn't cursed. You know what I'm saying? He got the curse when he came as Cain. That's when he got the curse of leprosy. That was the mark that the Most High cursed Cain with, leprosy. You know? So now let's go into the brother got the blue letter. We're gonna go into the definition on the word serpent, what it is in the Hebrew, the pronunciation, and the definition of the word serpent. Go ahead, brother.
Right. This is from the blue letter Bible. And again, you know, as you brothers know, the blue letter, you know, they go off sometimes. Esau throw things in there, but they're on point with this one. All right. So now they show the word from the Hebrew word there is nakash, which in the strong concordance is H5172, which basically means serpent, snake. Which A, meaning A is serpent, and meaning B is image of serpent. Now that's what you look at when you read it in Genesis, the third chapter. Like the brothers describe the characteristics of a serpent. A serpent's known for being slick, sly, cunning.
Right, fast talking.
Fast talking.
You know, not giving you a chance to think. You know, trying to put you into contracts that you don't know of.
Trap you up.
Trap you up.
And what's a perfect example of that? Which, you know, we're gonna do post production and add the scriptures in and everything. But in Matthew's the 23rd chapter, the Lord called the Pharisees and the Sadducees what? The Lord called other men serpents, showing you back then they knew that a serpent didn't necessarily mean an actual snake that was on the ground. It was a representation of a man who possessed the characteristics of a serpent. All right, now in these stupid ass churches, they sit there and make you think that it was an actual little snake, like that snake from the Jackson 5 cartoon. I forgot what the name of that snake was in there. That little gardener snake or whatever. Actually, you know, used to be talking. You see? Nah, it wasn't that. It was a man, and what you're gonna find out is that actually the spirit that was in that man is the same spirit that's in Esau. When you go into the scriptures, all right?
That's right.
So now, again, the Hebrew word there for serpent is nakash, which means image of a serpent, or basically is other places where to let you know that it's someone who possesses a characteristics of a serpent.
That's right.
Right?
And yeah, and you know, and Esau knows that that they are represented as a snake. They love that symbol of a snake. All right. They got this thing called the Ouroboros, which is a snake in the form of a circle biting its tail. And pretty much what that represents is them gaining control of the world, so-called the New World Order, these so-called Jews, the Zionists, the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, and it's called the Ouroboros, and it's a snake. Alright, and you also got the symbol of the caduceus or the seduceus. Alright, some people pronounce it, different. Alright.
Right, so now back at Genesis chapter 3, verse 1. So it says, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field. Now, right there, if I may, what you need to understand is that this ain't just talking about actual creatures. The Lord is comparing men to these creatures. All right, as the elder Sakaran said earlier, this is metaphorical. So you got to learn when to discern when it's literal and not non-literal. Now, when it says the serpent, we just went to the Hebrew word nakash, all right, which means a snake or a serpent or someone who has the image of a serpent. Now, when it says the next word would be what? The beast. Now, beast doesn't necessarily mean like a wild animal or whatever. Okay, the beast represents a man that's in a beastly state of mind, that doesn't have the laws and statutes and commandments of the Most High.
I got you.
Now, when you read the scripture, you got it?
Okay.
Go ahead, brother.
This is one of them. I got two. This is Psalm 73, verse 22. Okay, and let me see. This is King. Let me see. No, okay. This is a Psalm of Asaph. Brother by the name of Asaph that wrote the Psalms. You had different men that wrote Psalms. And King David wrote a lot of them, but this particular one is Asaph, and this is Psalm 73 verse 22. It says, "So foolish was I and ignorant. I was as a beast before thee." So you see, to be ignorant and to be foolish, meaning not knowing the laws, statutes, and commandments of the Lord, you will be what? A beast. Now, one of the laws of the Lord is, when it comes to your dietary law, when you eat your food, when you eat your lawful meat like steak, it says that you're not supposed to eat it with blood in it. But beasts in the field, all right, beasts in the forest or in the wilderness, they don't care about that. A lion would take a deer or a sheep and eat it raw, right? Raw, eat it, like that. It's not gonna take its time to cook it and all that. That's what makes a man on a way more high level than beasts. That we have morals. We got laws to abide by. That's the difference between us and animals. But the white man would like to say, beg to differ on that. The white man he'll be more on the side of being an animal, and he'll tell you, no, we're just animals. No, you an animal, motherfucker. You an animal. Alright, you a wild ass beast. Eat your food raw, okay?
Right. And so now, going back to the scripture, it says the serpent was more subtle than any beast, meaning out of all the other nations that were on the earth,
right?
You had the serpent, which is the spirit of the so-called white man. Keep that in mind. Basically, the spirit of the devil tells you that in Revelations the 20th chapter, right?
Yep.
Revelations 20 and I think verse 2. And it said he was more subtle than any beast of the field, meaning he was a beast, but he was on a higher level than the other nations that were around about him. Because the word subtile means what? Under the web, from the Latin subtilis. The Elder Tahar used to always go into that word. And basically that word means you're not able to be trapped by the web. A web is a trap, like a spider. Why does a spider never get caught in his own web? One, he walks under the web. And then two, he has a special ointment on his legs, which allow him not to get trapped in the web. So now the so-called white man, or the spirit of the serpent back then, he was more slicker and cunning than all the other nations that were of the field. And as we know, when you read in the book of Matthew 13 and is it 38, the field represents the world. So meaning out of all the other nations that the Lord created back then in the world, the spirit of the so-called white man, which was as a serpent back then, he was more slicker than all of them.
That's right.
I'm sorry, brother.
No, I'm just gonna get that scripture in Matthew's.
So don't get caught up on these words, because a lot of people in the churches, they get caught up in these words. Say, oh, it's a serpent. They get scared. Then you have people scared to walk by a snake. They think that, oh, that might be the devil. You know, it's just the Lord speak like the elder Sakaran went into earlier. That's how the Most High speaks. He speaks in parabolic talk. He
That's
speaks
right.
in riddles.
That's right.
He uses comparisons. Okay, the Most High is not simple or whatever like how regular people are.
Yeah, let me bring out a quick, not to go off the subject,
Come.
but is on the subject. Psalm 78:1. To speak about that, because the people they don't understand the Lord and they don't know the Lord. This is Psalm 78. It says, "Give ear, O my people, to my law. Incline your ears to the words of my mouth. I
Right.
will."
And remember now, the law and the words of the Lord's mouth. Without it, you're a beast. You're considered a beast.
That's right. Keep
You
that
see?
in mind. That's right.
Go ahead.
All right. It says, "I will open my mouth in a parable.
Mm.
I will utter dark sayings of old."
Right. So, and what's a parable? A parable is not something that everybody latches on and get the understanding to. A parable is
A riddle.
a riddle,
A dark
a
saying.
deep, dark saying
Right.
that only those that are in the know basically
Right.
understand what it's speaking about.
Right. Those
You
that the
know?
Lord has opened their minds to understand it.
Right, because the Lord
Get
got
it.
to open your mind, or else you're gonna be going over their head. If you try to go into Genesis the 3rd chapter, which I mean it's a lot. We can keep going further and further into it, but we just keeping it. We just touching certain points right now.
Mhm.
You know.
That's
And
right.
So
That's
you had
right.
something else.
No, that was it on that.
Okay. I want
So
to
we
bring
can-
out the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16, just to further prove, hit the point. I mean, which we pretty much made it, but further prove that the serpent is not necessarily speaking about a serpent. All right, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 10, verse 16. This is the Lord speaking too. It says, "Behold, I send you forth as sheep in the midst of wolves. Be ye therefore wise as serpents and harmless as doves."
Mhm.
Now, if you go on with that little, because you got some people say, "Oh, that's what it said. You got to take it literally." Then you be all fucked up, man, right there.
Right.
If the Most High, I mean, Yahweh Shai, the Lord, who you call Jesus Christ, whose real name in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shai, so-called black man, he said right there, he named 4 different animals, man,
Right. In one verse.
in one verse. So you mean to tell me the Lord's ministry was to animals and stuff?
Mhm.
No, he was speaking about men, but referring them to different type of animals because of the certain characteristics. So he said, "I send you forth as sheep," which is talking about us, the flock,
Right.
the disciples. Amongst the wolves, talking about what? Satan, the so-called white man, and the 2/3 of Israel.
Oh yeah.
And he said, "Therefore be wise as a serpent." Not that we are serpents, but you got to be wise as a serpent.
Right.
Now, what's that serpent? Go back to Genesis, the 3rd chapter.
Mhm.
The serpent, which was more subtle than any beast of the field.
That's right.
So that's why the Lord said, "Look, you're going to basically be wise, like how slick that serpent
Right.
was back in Genesis,
Right.
the 3rd chapter. That's how you got to be."
Right. Be wise like that, but be righteous.
But the thing is this, which, not to jump the gun in Genesis, the 3rd chapter, but that whole Genesis, the 3rd chapter of us going off and falling, that was all set up so that we can become wise as a
Exactly.
serpent and harmless as a dove.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So this was all set, because remember the scriptures tell you in Romans, the 8th chapter, the creature was made subject unto vanity, not willingly, but unwillingly.
Right.
So we didn't want to go off, but the Lord
Right.
subjected us that by the same who subjected the same in hope.
Mhm.
In other words, that was part of this cycle that we had to go through to get 360 degrees of knowledge. But now, like I said, I don't want to jump the gun, though.
Yeah. Now I want to get Psalms 51, and just to add to that real quick, Psalms 51 verse 5, and this is King David. All right. He says, "Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." So as soon as you're born into this flesh, you're a sinner. You know what I'm saying? Why? Because the curse that fell upon Adam, came upon us. You know what I'm saying? So we gotta partake of that. And that's just how the Lord, like the other Manasseh brought out. That's just how the Lord set it up. Set it up that way so that we learn both things: evil, how to discern evil, and how to discern good. That's the only way that you're able to become a judge. Which a judge is a god, pretty much. Because that's what the ultimate judge is, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai.